Most of us were taught the same story about productivity, that if we want to do more, achieve more, or become more successful, the answer is discipline. Push harder, wake up earlier, grind when you don't feel like it. And if you're struggling, the problem must be you. You're lazy, unfocused, or not motivated enough. But what if that entire story is backwards? That's the core question behind the book Feel Good Productivity by Ali Abdaal. Instead of asking, how can I force myself to work harder, the book asks something radically different. How can I make productivity feel good? Because according to research, psychology, and Ali's own experience, feeling good isn't the reward for productivity, it's the fuel. In this video, I want to walk you through how feel-good productivity explains its ideas, not just what the ideas are, but how the book actually teaches them, using real-world examples, stories, and practical reframes that make the concept stick. If you've ever felt guilty for procrastinating, burned out from trying to be disciplined, or frustrated that productivity systems just don't seem to work for you, this might completely change how you think about getting things done. The book opens by challenging the traditional productivity mindset most of us have absorbed without questioning. Ali talks about his own life as a medical student, someone who on paper looked incredibly productive. He had achievements, good grades, and external success, but internally he was running on stress, pressure, and fear. The motivation came from anxiety, from not wanting to fail, from the belief that rest had to be earned and enjoyment was a distraction. What he noticed, though, was that this approach worked only in short bursts. He could push himself for a while, but eventually he'd hit a wall. Motivation would disappear, procrastination would creep in, and then the guilt would pile on, which only made things worse. The book contrasts this with moments where productivity felt effortless, times when he was working on YouTube videos, experimenting with ideas, or building projects that genuinely excited him. In those moments, he didn't need discipline. He didn't need to force himself. He wanted to work. He could sit for hours without feeling drained, and the quality of the work was often better. This contrast becomes the foundation of the book's main argument. Productivity isn't about suffering, it's about energy, and energy comes from positive emotion. Instead of seeing happiness as something you earn after finishing your work, the book reframes it as the starting point. When you feel curious, playful, confident, or connected, your brain works differently. You become more creative, you persist longer, you're more resilient when things go wrong, and you're more likely to actually start. The book then builds on this idea by introducing the concept of energizers. These are things that naturally boost both how you feel and how productive you are. One of the most important energizers the book talks about is play. Now, when most people hear the word play, they think of something childish or unserious, but the book goes out of its way to redefine it. Play isn't about toys or games, it's about approaching tasks with curiosity, experimentation, and a sense of lightness. Ali explains that many of us drain the fun out of our work before we even begin. We turn everything into a heavy obligation. We tell ourselves this task is important, serious, and high stakes, and suddenly our brain associates it with stress, which makes avoidance feel natural. To explain play, the book gives examples that are surprisingly simple. One is turning work into a game by setting a short timer and seeing how much you can get done before it ends. Another is racing against yourself instead of an external standard. Instead of aiming for perfection, you aim to beat yesterday's version of you by just a little. There are also examples of adding novelty, working from a different location, changing the tools you use, switching fonts, playing background music. These things don't change the task itself, but they change how it feels, and how it feels determines whether you want to do it. Ali shares stories of creators and entrepreneurs who stay consistent not because they're more disciplined, but because they've designed their work to feel enjoyable. They treat projects like experiments. If something doesn't work, it's not a failure, it's data. This mindset removes pressure and replaces it with curiosity. The deeper lesson here is that when work feels heavy, your brain resists it, but when it feels playful, your brain leans in. Productivity becomes something you're drawn to, not something you have to force. Another major idea the book explores is power, which is really about feeling capable and in control. Many people think motivation comes first and action comes second, but the book flips this around. Action creates motivation, not the other way around. Ali explains this using research on self-efficacy, which is your belief in your ability to make progress. When you see yourself taking action and moving forward, even in small ways, your confidence grows. And as confidence grows, motivation follows. The book illustrates this with very relatable examples. Imagine you have a task like write a chapter or prepare a presentation. These tasks are vague, large, and intimidating. Your brain doesn't know where to start, so it defaults to avoidance. Instead, the book suggests shrinking tasks down to almost laughably small steps. Open the document, write one sentence, create a rough outline with bullet points that don't even have to be good. These actions are so easy they bypass resistance. Ali shares how simply opening a document and typing a messy first paragraph often leads to unexpected momentum. Once you've started, continuing feels easier, and every small win reinforces the belief that you can do this. This idea shows up repeatedly throughout the book. Productivity isn't about heroic effort, it's about designing tasks so that starting feels safe and manageable. When you feel powerful, when you feel like you're making progress, you naturally want to keep going. The book also talks about people as a major source of energy. Productivity is often framed as a solo pursuit, you alone, your willpower, and your to-do list. But humans aren't wired to work in isolation. Ali explains how simply being around others who are working can dramatically increase focus. This is why co-working spaces, study groups, and even virtual body doubling sessions work so well. You're not necessarily interacting, but the presence of others creates a sense of shared effort. The book gives examples of how accountability can be energizing instead of stressful when it's framed positively. Sharing your goals with friends, working alongside someone on a similar task, collaborating instead of struggling alone. Ali also talks about how asking for help is often framed as weakness, but in reality, it saves energy and reduces friction. When you stop trying to do everything by yourself, work becomes lighter, and when work feels lighter, you do more of it. Another major part of the book focuses on procrastination, but not in the way most productivity books do. Instead of treating procrastination as laziness or a character flaw, feel-good productivity treats it as an emotional signal. Ali explains that procrastination usually comes from three emotional blocks: uncertainty, fear, or inertia. Uncertainty shows up when you don't know exactly what you're supposed to do, why it matters, or how long it will take. The book gives the example of vague tasks like work on project or study for exam. These tasks feel overwhelming because there's no clear entry point. The solution isn't more discipline, it's clarity. Breaking tasks down into concrete actions, deciding in advance how long you'll work, giving yourself a clear reason why the task matters right now, not someday in the future. Fear is another huge driver of procrastination. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear that the work won't be good enough. The book explains that when fear is present, avoidance feels logical. Your brain is trying to protect you. Ali shares techniques for dealing with fear that don't involve pretending it doesn't exist. One is naming the fear out loud or on paper, saying, "I'm afraid this won't be good enough," or "I'm afraid people will judge this." Naming the fear reduces its power. Another strategy is deliberately lowering the stakes, writing a bad first draft on purpose, creating something you don't plan to show anyone. When perfection is no longer the goal, starting becomes easier. Inertia is the third block. Even when a task is clear and not scary, starting can still feel hard. The book emphasizes that momentum comes after action, not before. Waiting to feel motivated is a losing strategy. Ali uses simple everyday examples here. putting on running shoes even if you don't feel like running, opening your laptop without committing to working for hours. Just beginning creates movement, and movement creates energy. One of the most important shifts the book encourages is redefining rest. Traditional productivity culture treats rest as a reward. You work hard first, then you rest if you've earned it. Feel-good productivity flips this idea completely. Rest isn't the reward for productivity, it's a requirement for it. Ali explains how burnout often comes not from working too much, but from working without joy, without boundaries, and without recovery. He gives examples of people who are constantly busy but never truly rested. Their energy slowly drains and productivity suffers. The book encourages intentional rest, scheduling downtime, engaging in hobbies that genuinely recharge you, allowing yourself to stop without guilt. This isn't laziness, it's maintenance.